The morning it all changed for Soraya Veldon began with a shock so sharp it felt like the world had tilted beneath her feet. She had spent the past 4 years fighting her way out of poverty with nothing but grit, late-night studying, and relentless determination. But in one moment, one decision made from pure instinct and kindness, everything she had built was ripped away from her. She never imagined that helping an unconscious stranger bleeding on a quiet roadside would cost her the scholarship her entire future depended on. And she certainly never imagined that boy would turn out to be the heir to a billion-dollar empire. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube. Your support keeps these stories alive. Soraya grew up in the servant quarters behind the massive Whitestone Aldridge estate, where her mother, Mara Veldon, worked as a maid for one of the wealthiest families in the city. While the estate was surrounded by fountains, trimmed gardens, and shimmering pools that reflected the bright daytime sun like glass, Soraya's world was made of hand-me-down schoolbooks, a tiny bedroom with peeling walls, and the quiet determination to build a life beyond the boundaries of the estate. Her scholarship to the prestigious Northcrest Academy was the only reason she had been able to escape the limitations of her upbringing. She guarded it like a fragile treasure. One misstep, one absence, and it could be gone. For years, she had walked the same path from the bus stop to the gates of the estate after school. It was usually peaceful, lined with tall maple trees and warmed by soft daylight filtering through the leaves. But on that particular afternoon, as she turned the curve near Breville Road, she saw something that made her heart freeze. A young man, maybe 19, lay sprawled beside a sleek silver motorcycle that was turned sideways on the pavement. His helmet was cracked, one hand limp against the ground, and a dark streak of blood was trickling from his temple. Soraya dropped her books without thinking, the pages scattering in the gentle daytime breeze. She sprinted toward him, kneeling beside his still body. His breathing was shallow, his clothes dusty, and his fingertips lightly scraped with fresh wounds. Panic surged through her chest, but she forced her hands to steady as she checked for a pulse and lifted his head carefully. All she could think was that he needed help, and she was the only person around to give it. She called emergency services, her voice trembling, and stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. It wasn't until she saw the time, nearly an hour had passed, that reality crashed down on her. She had an academic review exam scheduled that afternoon, one that determined whether she kept her scholarship for the next term. Missing it was not an option. But she already had it. The next morning, standing in the office of Northcrest Academy, she received the verdict with her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the words. Her scholarship was revoked for an unexcused absence. No exceptions. No reconsideration. No second chances. She walked out of the building in a daze, the bright sun overhead seeming cruel in its warmth. She told herself over and over that she had done the right thing, but her future felt like it had disintegrated in her hands. She didn't tell her mother for 2 days, hiding the truth under forced smiles and late-night tears. But when Mara eventually found the notice tucked between Soraya's textbooks, her face fell with a sadness deeper than disappointment. It was the pain of knowing how hard her daughter had worked only to lose everything for a moment of compassion. With no scholarship, no money, and the academy's fees far beyond what they could afford, Soraya started working extra hours wherever she could, at a bakery in the mornings, cleaning offices in the afternoons, and helping her mother in the estate on weekends. She moved like a ghost, exhausted and heavy with a pain she carried alone. She blamed herself, even though she knew she had acted out of humanity. She stopped walking down Breville Road altogether, the memory too hard to bear. Meanwhile, the boy she had saved, whose name she didn't even know, was recovering in silence, unaware of the cost she had paid. But fate, unpredictable and relentless, had already set its next event in motion. 3 weeks later, the Aldridge estate buzzed with unusual activity under the clear daytime sky. Gardeners trimmed hedges, staff hurried across marble walkways, and elegant vehicles rolled through the gates. Word spread that the family's eldest son had returned home after a minor accident. Soraya didn't think much of it. Rich families had rich problems, but when she entered the main hall to deliver fresh linens, she froze. Standing near the grand staircase was the boy she had saved. He was taller than she remembered, with neatly styled dark hair, a healing bandage at his hairline, and a posture that carried confidence despite his injury. His eyes, sharp, discerning, and strikingly clear, were scanning the room as if searching for something. When they landed on her, something flickered behind them, recognition, disbelief, and something like relief. He stepped forward, and even without words, she knew he remembered her. His name was Cassian Aldridge, the billionaire's son. Over the next few days, Cassian asked about her constantly. Who was the girl who saved his life? Where did she live? Why hadn't she come forward? When he finally learned her name, he sought her out, thanking her with a sincerity that caught her completely off guard. His gratitude was warm, genuine, and persistent. But Soraya, still hurting from the consequences of that day, struggled to meet his kindness. She didn't want anything from him. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to relive the moment that had cost her so much, but the truth has a way of finding its voice. It happened when Cassian overheard two estate workers whispering about the maid's daughter who lost her scholarship after saving him. Their words carried across the garden like a sudden gust of wind, and before Soraya could escape, Cassian turned to her with a stunned expression. She looked away, unwilling to explain, unwilling to be the reason a wealthy family felt obligated to compensate her, but Cassian wasn't someone who ignored what mattered. Later that afternoon, under the soft daylight that spilled across the backyard terrace, he approached her not with arrogance or entitlement, but with the quiet seriousness of someone who understood the weight of a debt he could never repay with mere words. He expressed what he had learned, how deeply it impacted him, and how wrong it felt that her act of kindness had led to such a devastating loss. He promised he would fix it. Soraya didn't believe him. Not truly. She had lived her whole life seeing how the wealthy moved mountains for themselves while people like her were left dealing with rubble, but Cassian proved to be different. He spoke to the academy, the board, and every person in authority who had a hand in her revoked scholarship. He explained the incident, provided witness reports, and pressured them to reconsider. But the school, rigid, unforgiving, and driven by strict policies, refused to restore her scholarship on the grounds that exceptions would set a precedent. Cassian didn't stop. If they wouldn't restore her scholarship, he would sponsor it himself. The Aldridge family had funded countless academic programs across the country. Sponsoring a single student's education was effortless in comparison. But Soraya, her pride wounded and her emotions tangled, declined at first. Accepting his help made her feel like her efforts, years of hard work, and sleepless nights were being overshadowed by a wealthy boy's guilt. Cassian understood her hesitation, and instead of insisting, he found a way to give her back agency. He established a Compassion Award Scholarship at the Academy, a fund dedicated to students who performed acts of exceptional kindness in the community. He submitted her story anonymously to the board, ensuring they saw it as an act of merit rather than charity. When the decision came weeks later, her name was at the top of the recipients list. Soraya cried for the first time in months. Returning to school felt like stepping into sunlight after living in shadows. Her classmates welcomed her back, some in awe of the story circulating about the girl who risked everything to save a stranger. But the only person she looked for was Cassian. He didn't make a spectacle of what he had done. He simply stood near the gates the morning she returned, offering a small, quiet smile that eased something deep within her chest. Their friendship grew steadily from that point on, shaped not by wealth or status, but by the strange, undeniable bond formed in a moment of crisis. Cassian admired her strength, her selflessness, and her refusal to let hardship change her heart. Soraya found in him someone who saw her for who she truly was, not the maid's daughter, not the girl from the servant quarters, but a young woman who had fought her way through life with courage and kindness. They spent afternoons studying together, mornings walking the estate paths, and evenings talking under the soft fading daylight near the garden fountains. Every day felt like the world was shifting, slowly, gently, toward something new, something neither of them fully questioned but both felt deeply. And as her future began to bloom again, Soraya realized something profound. The moment she thought had destroyed everything had actually reshaped her life into something stronger, brighter, and filled with unexpected possibilities. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube. Your support truly means more than words can express.